Need to tell you. That's right. That's right.
Okay, there you go, Mary Jo.
Okay, thank you. So I am a forensic pediatric nurse practitioner. I'm almost finishing my PhD in forensic medicine through University of Oslo in Norway, but just moved back here a year ago for family issues. And currently I am working at Loma Linda University Children's Hospital, but we have a contract with the Barbara Sinatra Children's Center, so I'm there at least one day a week.
Do you do the
seeing patients.
interviews? Is that what you're
I do the exams.
You do the exams?
Yes, so I do the medical exams. We're a medical team of forensic pediatricians and nurse practitioners who do all of the exams for part of Riverside County, any kids from Riverside that go to Loma Linda Hospital, and then all of San Bernardino County. So yeah, it's something I've done. I did my training in UCLA specializing in this in '98, so it's kind of been a big part of my life. But
living in Norway, right?
sorry?
You said that.
Yeah, the last 11 years I've been in Norway, but I was doing more, less clinical and more research and teaching and program development.
I
So,
can't remember how long ago it was. When did you bring that team from Norway?
oh yeah, that was probably about 15 to 17 years ago. We brought some teams of law enforcement, yeah.
I've got the files in that computer right there.
Okay.
I didn't see that long ago, does it?
Yeah.
No.
No, you know what? Well, no, actually, you're right. I take that back. It could have, no, I don't know. Time runs together.
15 years ago, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we brought a whole team of more than us
Mhm.
over here, and they put on a couple hours
Mm.
continuing education meeting course in the courthouse. It was really, really good.
That was so fun. Exchange of information, I think we would call it, because you guys trained us just as much. So anyway, what I'm going to talk about today, sometimes we talk a little shop when we're having lunch together about children that they have seen, and it reminds me of children I have seen, and I just think we can all share information with each other in terms of maybe how we look at these kids medically and things that you guys might have in the back of your minds when you are with those children. Something, in case I forget to mention it, something new that Dr. Young at Loma Linda has created is something called the RICA Center, and that is where we see children after abuse, or any children who have gone through a lot of adversity can come to that clinic. We have therapists and we have forensically trained pediatricians and nurse practitioners who are trauma informed, and so we can kind of help them, because statistically kids who grow up with a lot of stress, they will have a lot more somatic health problems too, right? Have a lot more tummy ache, headaches, more likely to develop anything from obesity, diabetes, and other health complications, asthma, allergies, eczema, all kinds of things are stress related. And so RICA is there, a large clinic through IEHP. So far, we only take IEHP patients who can be followed when they have adversities. So that's a resource that
That's good to know.
yeah. And the reason I love that is when kids are in foster care, I can follow them now. So it's not just, well, you have a lot of injuries consistent with abuse, good luck with the rest of your life. And there's even a program called Give Back. So older kids who have had a lot of adversity, they can go to, we have day camps, summer camp, and they have mentors that follow them through high school, and then college scholarships. So these foster kids can have a better trajectory, or kids who, again, they've been homeless or just had other adversities. So those are programs you guys might want to come tour sometime. You'd be welcome, and we could show you around. It would be great to have you. You could meet our medical director. So I thought I'd start with a story of one child I saw who, he came because there was a history of his mom hitting him with a shoe. And he came to the clinic with CPS, who wanted me to evaluate if there were injuries that would be consistent with being hit with a shoe. So I started talking to this child and his father. And the story came to be that mother is very depressed, somewhat mentally ill, and hadn't been out of the apartment other than to the mental hospital for the last 3 years. And she's mostly lying on the couch, suffering, angry, can't make them food. Dad works in a fast food restaurant and brings home meals from there, and that's what their nutrition consists of. He's depressed. He has no after-school activities. He denies having any friends at school. And CPS is sitting there with their notepad ready to ask me, does he have injuries consistent with being hit with a shoe? And can you guys imagine why, hello, I might be a little bit even irritated by that question at that point? Because it's kind of the tip of the iceberg if I care if he's being hit with a shoe. By the way, he also had like really bad allergic shiners. So he had a lot of asthma, allergies. He had, again, obesity, and he had depression, and he had eczema. So if he's being hit with a shoe, who really cares? He's not going to do well. We know this statistically, unless there's a lot more intervention than telling mom not to hit him with a shoe. And this is just an illustration for how I think so often we look at one piece of a child's behavior, right? We look at one piece of a child's health situation. Healthcare is famous for this. People, you go in with one health issue and they just focus on that, when it's actually something entirely different if they would just ask a few more questions. So we can fall into that same track, I think, in forensics, where we just look for an injury and we don't look for the whole picture. And I would argue that you in your career could probably do the same thing with these kids, where you're just kind of looking at what are they doing instead of what does that represent. So, and this is an article by Anna Louise Schiertgengen. She's a Norwegian, and I'm going to tell you about some American researchers too, but the diagnosis can make us blind, right? Because all we care is what's right in front of us. You have a child that's just misbehaving, or a child that seems autistic, or a child that seems, whatever, and you're not thinking about, okay, well, what is their environment really like? Because I had a foster mom recently. She brought me a list of 39 reasons her foster child was a bad kid. And number 2 on the list was he is a liar, L-I-Y-E-R. And I explained to her he had just come out of like a lot of trauma. And she said he's so scared at night, he starts banging on my door at 3 a.m. and if I don't open it, I'm not opening it for him. I'm exhausted. And then he scratches the paint on my door. And he had been abused and heard tons of violence at night. Like, this kid had so much. And I explained to her, his behavior is normal childhood development behavior in an abnormal situation. Of course he's acting like this. He's adapting to his situation. And so we always have to think, is this just their adaptation? What are they adapting to? On Mondays, in order to get a little bit of a break from 20 plus years of child abuse, I work at an autism evaluation center in San Bernardino. And I can't tell you how I can't escape violence. How many of those kids, they're not autistic. But wouldn't you go into your own little world if your world, your environment was just toxic and scary and violent? You might stop talking, you might stop looking at people, you might really avoid reality too. So it's a very long 2-day process, the evaluation. I think it's excellent. That's another resource you might need, appreciate knowing about. It's in San Bernardino. It's called the Inland Empire Autism Assessment Center of Excellence, IEAACE, and it's near Costco in San Bernardino. And it's a wonderful 2-day eval, and we don't just say autism or not. We say, like, this child has all these other diagnoses. We're not sure if there's autism sometimes, and so we'll say preliminarily these things come back in 2 years after you do these other therapies that will then help us differentiate. So it's that kind of and we're a team of like a neuropsychologist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, medical, neurology, genetics, everything. So.
And what age groups are you dealing
Pretty much 0 to 21,
Okay.
but we have a wide range, even small toddlers and even 21-year-olds who, there's one right now we're evaluating, he's just not able to like critically think and get his life on track, and so they're thinking, is there an element of autism? Probably not with him, but we can say what there is, or what we're suspecting and what else needs to be ruled out.
Is that affiliated with IRC at all? Or
No, but we work with a lot of the same cases. Yeah, it's a county project, but like Loma Linda provides the medical staff, and
It's at Loma Linda? Or
no, it's
outside?
actually near Costco. It's
Okay.
its own building. Yeah, it used to be the CAC there, and so
Okay.
I worked there in the CAC years ago. Yeah, so I was going to talk about adverse childhood experiences. Why should they matter to me? Whatever my job is, resilience, and what we can do. Now, I probably won't get into all the resilience part because you seem like a talkative bunch and I would like to have interaction. So I could come back another time, or I can send you resources or whatever we want to do. So why does the whole child matter? I think I've kind of mentioned that, right? It is because so often what you think you see is not actually what you need to be paying attention to, and you need to look at the whole child to do a real evaluation. Because like the child I saw there about the shoe, that was not the whole child at all. And I know medical providers who would have said, this child has a mark that could match the shape of a flexible object and be consistent with abuse, right? And that would be the end. Whereas a whole child, you're saying, okay, where do we begin with the medical issues? Where do we begin with the depression and the lack of stimulation and the school failure and the no friends, and looking at the whole thing? So a lot of childhood conditions, including the obesity we talked about, are associated with adverse childhood experiences. And there's a whole history to this that stems back to a preventative medicine specialist in San Diego, but it is everything from depression, headaches, asthma, tummy aches. It doesn't mean that every child with asthma has adverse childhood experiences, obviously, but those ACEs, as we call them, can contribute to asthma because it creates a stress response in the body, which can create that same reaction with asthma. And now I want to tell you a little bit the story of Dr. Faylidi on the bottom there. He was a preventative medicine specialist who, do you guys all know who he is before I start to repeat it? Okay, so it's new. And my face is in his face, which is not good, not good, but you can imagine. Yeah, move over. No one should put their face in his face. He's amazing. But he was practicing in the 1980s in San Diego as a preventative medicine specialist when he was seeing a lot of obesity patients. And he was kind of curious, like, why is it that so many just dropped out of his program? Even if they were doing super well, they would just, like, disappear. He was trying to figure it out. He was very curious. And that's maybe one of my favorite parts of the story is he didn't just shrug and say, well, I don't know. He actually thought, I need to figure this out. He stayed curious about his field, even though he was getting a little bit more up in past midlife, but he wanted to know, why do my patients not succeed? And I love that for him, and I want to be like him. So he started asking them more questions, and he kept hearing this kind of theme of sexual abuse, and he thought, what would sexual abuse have to do with failing in an obesity program? Like, this makes no sense. It's my own weird mind. Until a patient called him and said, Dr. Faylidi, you really care about me. I know that, and I didn't want you to find out a different way, so I'm telling you first that I have decided to kill myself. And this shocked him because she was one of his stars. Like, she had lost a lot of weight, then had gastric bypass surgery, and now is fit, healthy, doing well, no problem. Well, what he thought was no problems. And he said, wait, please tell me, I don't understand. Why are you going to do this? And she said, you just don't get it. You missed the whole point. She said, I was sexually abused as a child. And food is my comfort. And my fat is my safety. And I don't want to live without those two things. Which with gastric bypass, she couldn't do. And that changed the trajectory of his practice because he realized the diagnosis made him blind. He was trying to make her thin. He wasn't trying to make her well. And sometimes there's a difference. And for her, there was a huge difference. Now, she got help. Last I heard, she was doing fine. But the point is that he decided from that point on he was going to find out about, he developed the term adverse childhood experiences. And he started asking all of his patients about 9 adverse childhood experiences. And it was really interesting because his colleagues said, no, you cannot do that. We will not allow, our patients are coming in for, a few select medical issues. You asking them if someone has committed suicide in their life, if they've ever, because he hadn't narrowed down the questions. He was just like shooting in the dark. Have you experienced this, that, the other? And it was like you can't ask those things. And he said, fine. And he, with his own money, got a pager, hired a psychologist, and had her on staff. And he said he never once needed to call. No one had a meltdown, but I interviewed him for a movie we did on this, and he said, I have folders full of letters saying, thank you for asking me. I thought I would go to my grave with that secret. And the thing is that this hasn't really been published like it should, but there were a third fewer sick visits after he started asking. And what we realize is that secrets make us sick. Why do secrets make us sick? We believe it's because, there are a lot of theories on it, but it seems like, I'll explain a little bit more of the physiology, but it seems like it keeps the stress inside your body, right? So he equated it with, like in the Catholic Church, when someone goes to confession and someone hears them and says, bless you, my child, that's freeing, and you can be healthier. We know religion can be a protective factor if you experience it in the right way. So what I always ask for people, whatever their career is, what is your goal? And if you can really remember what that is every day when you interact with your patients, you know what I mean? Because it's so easy. What is my goal? If my goal is to provide law enforcement a report on if there's abuse or not, I am quickly going to do my patients a disservice. Because I could argue that some of our exams could be, they could feel a little traumatic if I go in with that mindset, right? And I also think we should hold each other accountable with this, because I have colleagues where sometimes I've, tried to intervene a little. We had a physician in Norway who I felt like the kids were feeling worse when they got out of an exam with him, so I confronted him on it. He was our director. But I still just said, he was taking pictures with the kids, like spreading out their arms, and I felt like they must feel so vulnerable. But he himself was probably a little bit on that autism spectrum, and I don't think he was able to empathize, which is an unfortunate career choice, if I may say so. But he's a really sweet guy. But I think we need to, hey, have you lost track of why you're doing this? Because what is your goal ultimately? And these are the things that Felitti found when he looked at adverse childhood experiences. These were the ones that seemed to be most significant. So it was physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal or emotional abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect, a family member who's depressed or diagnosed with other illness, a drug or alcohol, substance abuse, a family member in prison, witnessing a mother being abused, or any kind of intimate partner violence. That should say father too. I don't know why I didn't put that. And then losing a parent to separation, divorce or death. And the number one thing to remember about these is they travel in groups. I think you can probably imagine why, right? Because if you have someone who is depressed, they may very likely be abusing substances, right? Then if they are abusing substances, they are much more likely to have poor boundaries, anger management problems. Anyone with addiction has other stuff going on. There's more likely than to lose a parent. We know kids who are from a single parent home more often will have sexual abuse because there's less supervision and more need. So we can see how these would intertwine with each other, right? So if you know that a child has one, you should always look for others. Should never stop. I never see a child for physical abuse and don't wonder what else has happened. And then the second thing is there's a dose-response relationship. So in a minute, you're going to see why this works this way. But it would be basically if you consider that each of these is its own pill. It's a medicine. And if you take one, it's not good. If you take one time, it's not good. But if you take one many times over years, or you take one every day, and then you add another one too, and you add them up, it's kind of like with ibuprofen, right? If you take one, it's not really going to work. 2 is going to work well. 3 is going to work really well. It's the same kind of thing, and I'm going to explain why. But to remember, of these 9 things, and of course there are other things, like these are the main ones that have been studied, but of course a child who's being incessantly bullied at school, a child who's witness to violence, so if one of their siblings is being abused, a child whose parents are contentious in their relationship. I had a kid in 2 days ago. I said to the dad, this entire exam, the child does have injuries consistent with abuse from his mom. But I said to the dad, I'm going to tell you that the animosity between you and the child's mother are much more dangerous than these bruises to your child's long-term health and well-being. I'm sure you guys could tell me horror stories. I do not understand. I mean, the dad admitted, he was like, I've got to be honest, it's taken over my life, my hatred for this woman. Like, it's all I think of. It's what I spend my money on. It's what I do. And the entire exam, it was like, yep, that's the mom. Nope, that's the mom's fault. Mom doesn't do this. Mom has Munchausen by proxy. I was just like, the toxicity in the room wasn't enough to just, and so I write in my report, it is emotional and psychological abuse. A child hearing that all day about half of their DNA, that's a problem. So that's not on here specifically, but that would be high on this list.
And that would be a major point that this group will.
I was thinking so, yeah.
We have a new minors counselor, not new in family law. 3 of these people have worked in juvenile court as minors counselors.
So I'm preaching to the choir. And if this gets boring, you guys, if you're like, yeah, okay, I was going to say, just stop me, because let's not waste all of our time.
Because minors counsel in family law court
Mm-hmm.
varies a lot from minors counsel in juvenile court. I mean, their experience, they know what to look for, blah, 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 blah. But in order to put it together for a report for family law court, this is the kind of stuff that you need to explain to the judicial officer.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, and if, please, I think it's much more fun if you ask questions, if you stop me, if you argu's fun. There's not enough disagreement in the world today as it is, so let's just bring it on.
What's wonderful is that the things that you're saying are probably things that we all know, but it's being put together in a different way.
Okay.
That we can formulate that in our attempts to work with families.
Yeah.
And kids. So no, this is perfect.
Okay, yeah, and I noticed that when we share interdisciplinarily is like things that I knew, I understand in a different way, because it's like, yes, yeah, it's just putting it together from, like, if you guys were to teach me about the same things, I would have the same, aha, there's another side of it too. It's so fun. So yeah, you guys should come to us one time. So this is more on the ACE study, which is just kind of showing the long-term impacts. So it's talking, their unintended pregnancies, depression, HIV, STDs, cancer, diabetes, they are all linked to it. And what really surprised Felitti when he started, so he asked people about adverse childhood experiences in his own clinic and went, wait a second, these people have a lot, and it seems to affect their later health. So he got an NIH grant, and he studied 77,000 middle-class Americans, Kaiser, Kaiser-insured patients. And the World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control said these are findings of the century, literally. They had never seen such a high correlation between causation and a set of risk factors. And the sad thing Felitti said 20 years ago when I talked to him was, there's been intense international interest and very little implementation. People go, wow, and then they walk away. And you'll see this in medicine too. If I were to lecture on this at a lot of medical facilities, they wouldn't know what I was talking about, which is just so sad. Because what he found is that people, for example, who have 6 or more ACEs, that have been exposed to 6 or more, they will die an average of 20 years earlier. It's huge, 20 years. And it's not just like they're more likely to get cancer or they're more likely to commit suicide. It's that, first of all, a lot of them will have maybe diminished sense of their self-value or worth, right? They'll have poorer boundaries. They perceive things worse. They have higher unemployment, higher criminality. All of those things put you in a lifestyle category where you don't eat as well. You're probably not exercising as much. You're probably not knowing how to pull on positive resources. And so it all just builds into a snowball of risk that gets you more often to have all these diseases. So depression, you can see as the number of ACEs goes up, the number of drug abuse, attempted suicide, obesity, heart disease, all of that goes way up. So they believe that if ACEs could be eliminated, work productivity would increase by 61%, suicide and life dissatisfaction go down by 67%, anxiety reduced by 56%. You know, this was just one. Obviously, these numbers are kind of based on one set of data, but this child, his score is 4, so he's 4.7 times as likely to use drugs, 7.4 times as likely to be an alcoholic when he grows up. It's just, there aren't many things that show these kind of consistent, pervasive changes in the trajectory over time. And this, now, we've been researching this for like 30 years, so it's powerful. 5 of the top killers in the U.S. are directly related to adverse childhood experiences. So think of the money we would save in public health if we invested in protecting children. So now I want to talk a little bit about why ACEs affect your health. And so I'm going to ask you to use your imagination a little bit, but if you've recently had a traumatic experience or that wouldn't be good for you today for some reason, you've been really stressed out, you don't need to do this. But if you can remember the last time you were really afraid, like heart pounding, pupils dilated, a little panting, afraid. It could be a nightmare, it could be anything. What is happening when that occurs is that feeling of fear. It is that your body is the little amygdala in your brain, it's the little alarm center kind of in the midbrain. It is activating the HPA axis and saying danger, just like if you meet a bear in the forest, right? It's saying danger. And that's what these ACEs are. That's why they're each a pill. They're each a medicine, because they're activating the amygdala to activate the HPA axis that says to the body, secrete the stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, secrete, be ready. Right? So if you're a child sitting in a classroom and you're like, is my dad, brother, uncle, whoever going to molest me tonight? Is my mom going to be too depressed to get off the couch and I'm going to be hungry when I get home? Whatever they're wondering, are my parents going to be fighting and I can't sleep again? They have this level of stress hormones in their body all the time. And having those stress hormones does several things. One, your brain is always a little on guard. You're watching. You're upregulated. Have you seen that in some of your patients? Yeah, so they're kind of upregulated. Yeah, your clients, sorry.
We especially have no patience with our clients.
And that's why I'm here today. No, I'm just kidding. No, so they're watchful, a lot of them, right? They're either watchful, I'm going to guess, or shut down, because sometimes you just can't do anymore. And so they're often like a straight A student. They've got everything under control, or they're just not pulling it together at school either, and they're really depressed. So that, obviously there are many exceptions to the rule, but that's what we see a lot. So to just summarize it, your body's being pumped full of these stress hormones that change everything. So they change how you form gray and white matter in your brain. You won't have the same brains if you have a lot of stress hormones. They change how your endocrine system works, because your endocrine system believes that you are in danger, and so it holds on to the wrong kinds of calories, and it's ready for famine, right? So it changes that. Often, autoimmune system, you start reacting to things that aren't even there, your body, right? So there you have increase in allergies, eczema, and asthma. All of these are autoimmune responses often. Now, am I saying, again, I'm not saying every child that has one of those has ACEs or has been very stressed. These are just things that turn off. There's a whole science of genes being turned on and off according to the stress hormones in your body. So this is kind of an example of how you see the HPA axis is activating all these other systems in the body to engage and respond in the face of stress. And so does it turn on these stress hormones? Do they eventually turn on the genes for things like mental health illness? Probably. It seems like it from our results from cancer, diabetes, all of these things probably. There are certainly big correlations. And you can think in your own life, are you a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn kind of person? Are you guys familiar with these?
All of them but fawn.
Yeah. Okay, so the fawn is where you're like, oh, you're
Oh, that
upset.
one.
I'm so sorry. What can I do for you, right? Are you a person who, when someone's mad at you, you're just trying to appease them and make them happy, and how can I help? Or are you a person who's ready to get in their face? Oh, yeah? You want to mess with me? That's your fight. A flight just avoids and gets under the bed, gets in the closet, just or goes into their own little world. They don't want to know. Some people freeze. They cannot talk. They cannot move. They cannot respond at all. And all of those are responses to these stress hormone surges. And that will tell you a lot about your kids, too. So if you're having kids that are very depressed, it could be that they're just often going into freeze. If you have straight A's who are pleasers and they're really high, nice to meet you, they may be fawners who are just, this is how they get by, is making that one parent always kind of be okay. Does this make sense? You guys know what I mean? It's kind of fun to identify in ourselves too. Like, I definitely know which one of those I am. I'm a total fawn. How can I just appease everyone in the room? It's both good and bad. There will often...
and again, because these are natural phenomenons in the body. I mean, this
100%.
They are there to protect ourselves, to tell yourself, hey, you got to pay attention to something. You know, and these are all good things.
Exactly.
I mean,
when the
that's
bear
whole
is
point.
coming at you.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so so lots of times when people are acting this way, it's healthy. I mean, their body's working. Because
Yes.
we have to understand that too. And then that's why you look at the whole child.
Yes.
Like, okay, so where is this coming from? When are they acting this way? Where is it? You know, what are those pressure points that are hitting them? And then seeing is that the way they're acting? Is that really appropriate?
Yeah, and I think helping them to name it, you know, because parents, I had an autistic evaluation recently where this child is so violent that the police come regularly. The crisis team, they have like a set plan every time. So she locks the grandma in a bedroom, the dad locks himself in another bedroom, and then she makes sure he's safe in another part of the house that he can't destroy too much, and they just ride out the storm. But if it's getting too dangerous, then she calls the crisis team, and if they can't calm him down, then they call the police. He's been admitted multiple times, and he's a young teenager, like barely a teenager. And after, like, really reviewing his records, talking to him, talking to her, his grandma's bipolar, one day she's hugging him and helping him with his homework. The next day she's throwing things, cussing, saying he ruins their life, etc. But his dad is very abusive, mostly to the mom, but some to him. And he has said help many times, like he desperately wants his mom to leave his dad. And mom's a good mom. Like you see that she really is able to, she's working hard. She's doing classes and she's doing everything she can to try to help him. But, sorry?
Leave the dad.
Yes. So I told her, you know, you are an amazing mother. I see that. And I explained all her strengths. And I just said, but you need to understand that as long as you stay with your mom and his dad, he's not going to be okay. He's just not. And I said that he's responding normally to an abnormal environment. And this is the definition of insanity. You're repeating the same behavior again and again, expecting a different result, and it's not going to be different, and he's going to continue to get worse. And you could set him on a trajectory to prison if we don't really watch out here. But you can't be a good mom and protect him and stay where you are. So it's either residential care or you have to leave.
So what has she said about leaving?
She has tried before, but he got an attorney, and the attorney said that he would get custody and that he would get the house. Even though the child has said multiple times that his dad's abusive and never said his mom.
So she won't act.
Right.
Got it. So if we are in these crazy cases, David shared one today. I've had a bunch. We've all had them. How can you help us here? I'm looking at the dynamic of what you're talking about, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff, as in the case David talked about earlier, years and years of zero progress and nothing's moving. And there's obviously dynamics in there that, based upon just what I've learned in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So how do we integrate that with you as we're working on our minors counsel cases where we have these kids who are out of control? Is there testing? Is there something that we can do to look at a different
Let me
level?
go beyond that. Are you in a position where you could be subpoenaed to come and testify, not about that particular case, but about this information?
I can find out. I don't see why I wouldn't, right? I mean,
Carol, how could that be relevant if we have, if she's just there talking the stuff we're hearing here? She's got to integrate and the testing that you talked about. You know, having that testing of that child and getting that background and information to go to a court and say, here's what we got here. Ms. Williams, Ms. Chris, Ms. Adams, you guys are right, but here's this dynamic over here that none of us understand. We're just trying to make it work. But I'm just saying that's a whole new level of putting into perspective, right?
yeah.
The
And
dynamics.
And as a bench officer too, the way a lot of people deal with that is medication,
Right.
and they over-medicate.
Right.
So
There's a whole
I can't tell
study
how
on
many
this,
times
yeah.
I see these kids, young kids,
Yeah.
that are just on, this ton of medication, and I'm like, I'm not comfortable with this. I am not comfortable with this.
And
it's
sometimes, I
big,
will
big,
say,
you know.
I agree with you, and at the same time, there are times where they need to be on it for a little bit, and you remove them from the environment,
again,
and you...
Right, but I mean, because even in your example, if grandma's bipolar, he could have that too. I mean, that could be
Later
part of
on,
it.
mhm.
There's no question about that, but I mean, we know that they mask. It's just mask. I mean, they load them up with stuff and they set them in the corner, because that's peace. That's
Unfortunately,
reality.
he's retired also.
Oh, that is so sad. That's so sad.
But to my point, I'm just saying that some of these very challenging and difficult cases that we see have this element that we can't really analyze.
Do
Because
you
we
guys
see-
report to CPS for emotional abuse?
No,
Yeah.
generally not.
But
Okay.
what we
We
generally
can.
get back is a report that says, we're gonna refer to our Wisanaki Center for Counseling. However, this does not rise to the level of,
Mm.
intervention, our intervention. And we're gonna mark it either unfounded or unsubstantiated, and I've gotten those over and over.
Oh, yeah.
Over and over the
But the
last
question goes past that.
6 or 9
I'll give you an
months.
example. I have 2 kids. Okay?
Mhm.
They're the most obstreperous and difficult kids that I've had in my minor counsel work. Rude to the dad. They don't respect people, the kid said to me one day, I shared earlier, he and his sister were walking ahead of us and in front of the dad and myself, and I said to them, would you slow down? And when I got to the car, and the 12-year-old kid said to me, you need to walk faster. To me, I'm his counsel. Wanted to go slap the kid. I didn't. All I'm saying is, I would like to have, maybe he needs to be diagnosed. Maybe we can understand, right?
Mhm.
The daughter will go into her room and close the door for days at a time. She won't come out. She won't talk to her daddy. He goes, I got breakfast. I don't want it. I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, I mean, we
so I don't know if that's-
routinely write reports where we say things like the level of animosity between the parents can affect this child's trajectory over their lifetime negatively and would be consistent with childhood emotional and psychological abuse.
Correct. And what we want to avoid is that kid 2, 3, 4 years down the line who does all the things that you talked about.
Yeah.
They become criminals, they become drug addicts, they become alcoholics, they're in prisons. I mean, I got 11, 12-year-old kids who I think should be saved. But I don't have the mechanisms by which to do it. I can observe the behaviors,
Mhm.
right, which we know are totally inappropriate.
And there goes your secondary trauma. Do you guys have some kind of therapy or
Whenever we can get an order for
support?
to go to the program instead of,
Right, so that's what we're talking, maybe
we need
some.
a handout.
I feel like I need to talk to our medical director, but I just wonder if it would be possible because RICA, our clinic for foster kids, has some space still. I just wonder if it would be possible to refer a lot of these kids for evaluations there and even some. But I mean, some of it will come down to funding, right? It was probably something to go through like IEHP, would the courts do it? Because to be honest, there's even a building out here that we're exploring. I know that the county has met on and stuff of opening the same thing out here. It's near Barbara Sinatra. It's a separate, and that would be for, I mean, if this was part of that, like.
So I'm
But
talking,
it's only for
I'm talking not calling.
Foster kids, it's not helpful for
Right.
us.
but-
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying it's kids with high adversity. It's the same trajectories we're talking about, right? These kids have the same outcomes.
So I'm not saying call CPS to turn them in. I'm saying let's evaluate this kid.
Mhm.
We got this kid with some bad behavioral issues. We see the patterns, we see the dynamics. Dr. Sheeran does the 730. He tells us all about the psychological testing. But to have that kid specifically tested for these kinds of things that you talk about,
Mhm.
Screening.
to be able to assist the family in a better way.
Mhm.
Right? Like you talked about the woman who had the eating disorder and how making
Mhm.
her skinny was making it worse.
Yeah.
Because that was her.
Mhm.
We can't see that stuff. We can't
No.
make those recommendations and understand how that interacts with the dynamic that they're experiencing with their families and why they don't want to see dad and why they're making allegations up of sexual abuse, all this crazy stuff that
Right.
we spend our time trying to fix.
Right.
Well,
I want-
especially, I'm sorry. Sure.
Yeah, please.
Especially in the example of the girl who got skinny. I mean, so our first, if we see her doing well,
Oh yeah.
and so our first reaction is, oh, you look really good, congratulations.
Yes.
And that is the worst
So
thing you can
dangerous.
say for her
Yes.
at that time.
Yes.
And that is, hello?
We don't know that.
We don't know
We
that.
don't know that, no.
We don't.
You don't know that.
She didn't work hard. Very
What was she gonna say? You were
Well,
next.
For funding purposes, and I actually do work for, in the juvenile dependency part, for
Uh-huh.
the foster kids. Well, I didn't even know about half of this stuff, so my eyeballs just about popped out. I know about Barbara Sinatra, but I didn't know anything about Loma Linda and some of the evaluations that you do there.
Yeah.
Continuing if they do have the abuse, which
Yeah.
is great. I know IEHP at one point paid for their cabs and stuff like that
Mhm.
to drive them out there.
Mhm.
But if what she's saying is that for the evaluation itself, most of our kids in the Coachella Valley have IEHP. And
Perfect.
therapists locally say that they're already approved for XYZ. Is there somebody we could contact to see whether or not that screening tool would be covered by IEHP?
And unfortunately, in family law,
We're not allowed to do that?
no, it's not that. Most of them may not be covered by IEHP.
Well, they have private
Maybe
insurance.
50-50.
Uh-huh.
So we got a lot of kids who are private insurance.
Do you have a screening tool that people can use?
We-
outside of your clinic?
No. We
Well,
are
the
all
assignment that you work
we are all, trauma informed and forensically trained providers that we do use a variety of screening tools at different points, but it's like things that are recognized everywhere, like Vanderbilt and Scared and all of those, to see is there. But I mean, I won't ever just say ADHD if I do say the Vanderbilt. Are you a psychiatrist or something? What is your background? Okay, so like a child that comes to us with ADHD symptoms, I'll never say it's pure ADHD because they've got all this trauma. Of course their brain is all jumping all over the place and they're upregulated and all that. But I will say that they have, symptoms of ADHD that may or may not be influenced by this, but they need this trauma therapy to see, and we might put them on an ADHD med for a little bit just to get them kind of calmed down and then see if the therapy can work better.
So how are these people coming to you? How are you getting these kids to
Every
evaluate?
child that comes to us, pretty much every child, is either referred by a pediatrician who knows that they should be in a high-risk clinic, or they are referred by CPS or law enforcement. So we would just need to find, how many children a year are we talking that you think would benefit from evaluations?
Hundreds.
Literally?
I don't think it's that many.
In family law, you think?
No, I don't think it's that many. I think we have the run-of-the-mill cases which we never get involved in because it's just a squabble about who's timeshare. But I'm saying the ones that we get involved in, we're dealing with the high stressor cases, right? I probably get 2 or 3 of those a year.
Okay.
And I work those cases until those kids graduate from high school.
Oh, that's so good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how many of the ladies, but there's only a half dozen of us who do this. Now, the court doesn't always have the resources, because there's only Virginia and Carol and myself and David, pretty much, and we have some new people who will join us. But, I would say if each of us took 2 or 3 cases of that highest magnitude, we may be talking a couple of dozen cases a year.
I have 2 of them that I got in one day.
I know,
They're
I know.
horrendous.
I did too, I got like 3.
I know, but I'm saying that,
That's
I know, all of,
4 of us.
right, but I'm just saying that if you take the highest end of these kids,
Yeah.
not, we're gonna filter down,
No.
but if we get the kids who are at the highest risk, right? And you look at, when you start there, to me, that's where the process begins.
I agree.
Right?
I've got some to contribute to the test run.
I have 3 right now. I'm ready, I'll take them down myself, okay?
I'll take mine.
Tell me when I can make an appointment.
And then you need to let her finish, but contribute her.
Oh yeah, no, I don't think I have to. I mean, the most important thing is sharing, right? I don't have any agenda that I have to get through this,
We're
but
learning from you.
okay. Was there something else you wanted to say? No. Okay.
Well, just very quickly, if
Yeah.
a court ordered it, like you said, if
Yeah.
CPS
Mm.
is okay sending it over,
Yeah.
if a court ordered evaluation, you'd have that evaluation, right?
Yeah. I just have to find out how it would all work, but I think it's worth exploring. I mean, I would rather do more of them, like create a line of this so that it's not even just the ones that are desperate, but that we actually see the ones that we can maybe stave off some of the symptoms before they get super bad.
The court can order you and somebody's gotta pay you, okay? And the parents who can afford Dr. Sheeran and these 7:30 evaluations, I'm guessing, but you're talking $20,000-$25,000 a case, yes, no? About, right? So, there's a small number of the litigants here who have the financial resources to do that. Most of the IEHP people ain't got that resource. I don't charge for my services as minors counsel, by the way.
Oh.
And as a private lawyer, I charge $500 an hour. So somebody's gonna have to come up with the funds, right, to get that process going, even though it may be helpful to the cases. And the people who have the money, right, probably don't have the highest risk kids. Because they're the kids who've been,
They're probably in therapy anyways.
right, exactly, but these are the kids who've been homeless, who've been shelterless, who haven't had any food to eat, whose parents don't have jobs, who, they don't have money. So I'm just brainstorming. I just think it's an incredible understanding of these
Yeah.
dynamics and a way to get to some level. That's all.
I think if you had some sort of basic screening tool, maybe I'm so, but I'm too.
I mean, we have the
Involved.
ACEs screening tool. So, like, we have adverse childhood experiences screening tools. But are you thinking symptom checklist or more what they've experienced?
Well, I have symptom checklist tests now that I use.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking something like maybe an ACE.
Yeah, there are lots of those out there.
Okay.
I can send you guys the resources. But yeah, it is actually tragic in a way. Do you know who Nadine Burke Harris is? She was the the health officer for California or whatever. First time we had appointed one, and she was in Sacramento. I think she's still there. I loved her concept. She determined that every child in California has to be screened for ACEs. It's one of those really well-meaning and misguided projects, because basically you walk into the pediatrician office and they hand you a score. Have you ever blah, 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 blah. How many parents, to me, it's inflicting shame, because you're sitting there, it's in a vacuum. Do most pediatricians have time they have 10 to 15 minutes of visit, and you're there for a cold, cough, tummy ache, and diarrhea for the last 2 weeks. They are not going to get through your screening tool of have you experienced adverse childhood experiences, and let's talk about the sexual abuse you just marked positive. I mean, seriously, it's just like, it's so bad. And so here they've sat and like, if they're honest, yeah, and then they go out. Or not trauma-informed pediatricians and staff who probably say stupid things. I have never seen it work well. Yes?
Diana and I are both therapists, and we both deal with, and have for years, lots of high conflict families. We get lots of referrals for different kinds of services through family court, through attorneys. I think even though there are probably many screening tools, and maybe we wouldn't have time or it wouldn't be appropriate or applicable, we could take some of the issues that are identified, and I think we do. I'm sure you do the same thing. Because if you look at the whole picture, and I was trained at Loma Linda,
Yeah.
and they're very family systems.
Yes.
Their
Mhm.
approach, and I love it.
Yeah.
So if you look at the whole picture, we could start to identify, and I think you probably do it too, as this ever happened, and talking to the parents and or the child alone. What kinds of things go on, and then we start to get that picture. So
Yes.
it would be wonderful to have one simple checklist.
Yes.
But I think as therapists anyway, we can incorporate that into our interviewing. and
You have
getting
time for
information.
that.
I think because we're private practice and we.
Oh, nice.
We don't work for an agency that's giving us.
Oh.
And these two get a lot of the court referrals.
Okay.
Because these two are highly respected by the court. as
Oh,
far as
nice.
Knowing.
Send me
Thank
some of
you.
those.
Sure. Okay. No, that's great. That's
We
great.
want you to send it to the attorneys too.
Yes.
Send it to who?
Wait, hold on. Let me do a little bit of housekeeping just for a second, because did everyone here get the thing for Dropbox? Okay.
No, I don't know, no, they didn't. No,
No.
everybody didn't.
Did not.
Everybody did.
Everybody didn't.
Just the participants got it. I mean,
Okay.
just the presenters got it.
Just the presenter.
But I can send it, I mean, we can send it to anybody. I've got it set up so that anybody that has the link can access it.
Okay,
What
because what
is it?
I'm thinking, okay, so I have everyone's signed in, and those of you who write like doctors, it's gonna be a problem to
Send me a
read
list.
the email. But I've got everyone's email here.
Send me a list of all the emails, and I will just share the Dropbox folder with everyone that's on that list.
Okay, I'll do that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Because what I'm thinking is then, Mary Jo, anything you drop, you can drop, we'll send it to
Yeah.
you.
She'll be able to drop it in there.
Yeah, and then we can drop it in the Dropbox, so everyone
If
has
you want
it.
it to be sent to you.
And everybody can have it.
Yeah, he got it.
David's got something.
I tried to open up
You're not.
my computer, one of the keynotes
Uh-huh.
that was being talked about today from the Dropbox, cause
Right.
I have it, I can't.
You don't
'cause I'm
have-
on I'm on
You're on
Windows, so
you're on Windows
that's the
PC.
problem.
Yeah,
It-
neener,
you
neener.
just share everything.
Neener.
Just saying.
There are Windows people that still exist.
I'm just saying.
Some of the
Some of the
things
things we can't open.
There are poor, misguided Windows people.
Yes.
But we can
Yeah, and
somehow
those
fix
of us
it,
who have AOL
deal with
too,
that,
right?
right,
Hello.
Dale?
It can be,
Almost online.
Keynote can be converted to PowerPoint. I will convert the keynotes to well, actually, I won't be able to convert the ones that we've recorded today to PowerPoint.
But if we send, did we send them over into PDF? I know I sent mine.
If you'll put everything in there in PDF, then everybody can open it. Yes.
That would be-
Okay,
that
so
would be better.
everyone, okay, not all our presenters are here, but who's ever
The,
here.
the keynote presentations, we recorded, just like we're recording this one right now. This is a PowerPoint, but we're recording it. Those that got saved then, I'm not sure that I can still convert them because they got saved with audio in them.
Oh, okay.
The original, I could certainly convert to a,
PDF.
well, I could convert it to a PowerPoint. The best thing would be for you guys to send me a PDF of your presentation, like in a handout format.
Okay, Mary Jo, can you do that?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Sure.
You may have already done that, I'm not sure.
No, I just sent the one we're doing right now.
Okay,
So,
can you
yeah,
convert
I
it?
think
Okay.
I've got 2 copies of yours though, so I think I'm good.
oh, okay.
I
Okay.
think, yeah, yours I
Did
have
I
2
send it
copies.
twice?
For some reason or other, one said copy and the other one was the original.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, I think that was me, I think. That was my technology.
Well, I didn't know
wisdom.
I did, but that's great.
But that's fine.
Okay, that way we can all share whatever at the end of this
Yeah,
ongoing that we want,
and of
right?
coure the
Yeah,
good news
I'd rather
guy is
send it in a
Windows folks
handout
could buy
form.
Macs and be, you know.
Oh, listen to this, listen to
I'm semi-retired.
There's a bias.
But I am going to Europe, so.
I can send it again in PDF form so my notes aren't on here because
That'd
I'd
be
probably
great.
rather that anyway.
Okay.
So I think we've kind of, you understand why all of these physical manifestations, oh, how funny, I forgot to change, utmattelse in Norwegian is like fibromyalgia. So sorry about that. I had forgotten to translate one word, I see. So kids who are kind of like chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, things like that are often linked as well to this. And that's one population I really worry about is these kids who are homeschooled and they're not getting out and experiencing life in the world, they're not learning, and they have such strong parent associations that protect them from going anywhere. And yeah, that's...
There's a book I'll tell you about.
Oh, okay.
I think if it's okay with
Yeah.
you, if we could switch over, Judge Wells.
How much more do you have to present?
There are a couple more. Oh yeah, I see it. I have 3 minutes. So shall I just wrap up with a couple more? Let me
Yeah.
just see where I...
Da er vi ferdig. Pakk sammen og gå igjen.
Jeg får en liten prat med deg.
Det er ikke alvor. Det er du som har sitt. Du får meg ikke. Jeg plager deg ikke. Jeg tror ikke på deg. Jeg skal bare fortelle meg. Fortell meg hva du gjør. Jeg forklarer jo. Jeg har jo forklart deg det allerede. Ting som er fornuftig. Det er jo... Hva er problemet ditt? Jeg orker ikke. Slutt å si hold opp da.
Det er ikke noe farlig, vennen min. Mamma og pappa var bare litt uenige.
Går det bra?